good time here. Oh, yeah, Lord. Ah!
Welcome back to Reality Check, everybody.
Well, yeah, this is reality
Yeah.
check. So, yes, hola, all. Welcome back to Soul Mechanics. We have been scrambling all night back and forth from store to store, shopping for Christmas shits, which kind of segues us into the sort of, I suppose you could say, the circumstance of the video. We do not want to, and I'd like to make note of this, we do not want to officially celebrate Christmas via Soul Mechanics. Not necessarily because of the religious connotations attached to it, but more so because I just don't like it. I don't like Christmas.
I saw a cute card when we were at the store getting gifts that was a big wall of, like, you know, greeting cards, whatever, and one of them was so cute. It just said, "Happy whatever you celebrate," and it was all cute and had, like, flowers and stuff. I almost bought it. It was really cute. So, yeah, happy whatever you celebrate.
Yeah, happy whatever you do celebrate for the Christmas time.
And blessed Yule, everybody.
But, I mean, initially I had not... I'm saying we've been all over the place shopping and whatnot because we're a little dragged out and things may seem somewhat discombobulated here. We're not exactly perfectly prepped for this one, but we do have some good shit for you ready to go. Firstly, to note is the reason why we're mentioning this, the whole Christmas thing, is because we are going to be doing here what will amount to sort of an unofficial Christmas celebration video, because I was cued earlier today to do just that. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that story to open us up. Now, the video that we're going to be responding to here is finally getting around to responding to one of our sort of midway target assets, earlier but still a little later on in the development of the channel. But this young lady, magnificent young lady, and her channel has been a target asset for a long while, and I've been promising her, madam, I've been promising you that I'd do a video for you for a while now. We're finally getting around to doing it, not just, you know, not just because, but because in fact it lines up perfectly with what we are intending to do at this time, which is going to be regarding the what I know of as being the last video that you did. You might have done another one since then, but the last video that I saw of hers, we're going to be responding to here. But why was I making note of that?
So what's the video?
The video is about it. It's called Time Swap or something like that. The channel is called Are You Awakening, and we're doing this video for her specifically, just to address her channel. She's somebody that this young lady is actually building her own sort of YouTube collective, just like ours.
Do you personally know this person?
I've spoken with her,
Oh.
but I wanted us to collaborate and get our collectives working together. And so the video that she made lines up perfectly with what we were intending to do with this investigation. But I wanted to tell the story first, what happened. That's why I was mentioning it, because to make note for her, you know, just to introduce some of the things that we deal with is a particular, this story is regarding a particular synchronicity that had occurred, and I'm sure that she's familiar with synchronicity. It's going to be one of the heavier topics that she would deal with on her channel. Synchronicity in general is, I had told stories before in previous videos that we did. One about having, when I went shopping, I took my mom shopping. I went to help her, you know, pick up groceries and carry them back home to her place, and some woman stopped and gave us a bunch of groceries, extra groceries she had. She just stopped and said, "Hey, happy holidays," and she gave us a bunch of fruits and vegetables and shit out of her car.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, and then the next day, I went to go cash out my card at the ATM, and an older, it was freezing, fucking freezing cold outside, just bad. I get like 2 houses up and I'm already ready to give up. And an older woman pulls up next to me, and she's like, "Oh, get in the car, honey, I'll give you a ride. It's cold outside." And this woman gives me a ride to the ATM to cash off my card, to the store where I needed to pick up shit for my mom, then back to my mom's place, and then she gives me a sack full of fucking quarters, because I had mentioned I was getting cash to use the Rapid, and so she gives me a sack full of quarters for taking the ride to get a ride to work that day. So that was 2 of these 3,
Incidents.
Well, there's synchronicities, but what are they?
Coincidence.
What's it called when you're giving to people? Charitable, I suppose you could say. These charitable synchronicities that occurred.
That's really sweet.
Now,
just random old ladies driving around, giving people stuff.
Yeah, this one is particularly cool though, because there's just so much attached to this one. Now, this morning, I got up earlier than I usually would have. I wanted to do some shit with the initiative page and prep some things, do the song of the day, and I'll get all that out of the way early. But as it happens, I did in fact get it all out of the way fairly early, earlier than I had anticipated. But rather than having some time to just sit around and waste some time in the morning and hang out, talk to people on the internet and whatnot, as it happens, I was also out of tubes to roll cigarettes, and so I had very few cigarettes remaining, and I knew that if I sat there, I'd smoke all my cigarettes and I'd be out, and then I wouldn't have enough for tonight. So I decided to leave for work early, and so I left like fully 20 minutes early, which might not seem like much, but 20 minutes as regards getting to work, it's like that's pretty much the whole trip. So I've got a lot of extra time to waste now, and that 20 minutes can span out for me into a great deal of time. And so I'm just kind of, slowly pacing my way there and having fun looking around, riding the bike, and I hear this, which you guys you'll have seen in the opening of this video. I posted the little video that I made this morning of this, before the intro, of what I think is like a church. Like, I'm going to presume it's like a black people church, because it's got a bunch of what sounds like, religious black folk singing and dancing in there.
Yeah, like the big, boisterous
like
chorus.
I don't know what to call
Choruses.
it.
It's a giant choir.
And as I had stated to somebody at work, a friend at work, Kim, she was particularly excited to see the video and to see what I had filmed of that. I told her I presume it's a black people church, because they don't often run into white people singing and hooting and hollering that way. They're not as
got their own tambourines.
They're not as enthusiastic as.
If my parents took me to church like that, I probably still would go.
Right. But so it's a super fun. But this is like a storefront area. You'll have seen it in the video that I will have posted. So I don't know if it was a church, but it sure seemed like it was a church. So I stop in front of it and I record, and I start like singing along with them, and I record a little bit. And mind you, I stopped because I had the extra time to spare and because it sounded interesting. Also note that I was out of cigarette tubes, so the first thought that I had when I'm leaving is that I need to find $3. Specifically, I need $3 to get more tubes. And I stop at this little place because I have the time early, because I left, because I was out of tubes. And I hung out there for a minute, I recorded, and then I start walking the bike to the corner because the lights, it's the don't walk sign, so I didn't ride the bike across the street. I just walked it to the corner, and I stood there, and immediately when I got to that corner at that place, this dude pulls up, and this dude is classic like he looks like Santa Claus. Okay, he's an old man with a big white beard, old white guy with a big white beard, like the classic kind of white people's version of God kind of character. And I made note of this before. I've stated that there's a certain sort of recurring characters that blues, especially blues further along in their development, are going to likely run into from time to time throughout
Santa
their life
Claus.
stories. The Santa Claus and the traditional white guy God character, they go hand in hand. They're pretty much the same caricature. And this dude, he speeds up to the corner right when I get there, pulls up, he rolls down his window, he says, "Merry Christmas, lad, young lad," and he hands me $3.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, I didn't even question it because this happens so many times, this sort of thing. Like, not specifically something that specific, but this sort of thing has happened so many times to me that it's like, I was just like, yep, thanks, of course.
You must have been a good boy this year.
And he drives off, and it's just like, there's a lot I want to say as regards that. I think I'll make another video kind of touching on this topic, and particularly that story, another time, because it's like that, like I've stated, that this character, this recurring character, that essentially in my mind is kind of like almost like the God figure, the God character appearing in human form. There's so many attributes that, attributations you could say, that are attached to this character. When you run into him, he's always going to be like on the spot with something that's just like that. $3 was exactly what I needed. In most cases where I run into this kind of character, and for me, it's always like an old white guy with a white beard. Might be a gray beard, might not necessarily be bright white like this Santa Claus looking motherfucker here, but it's something to that effect along those lines. Gray to white, older man beard. And it comes across to me as being like the Morgan Freeman God character, like from Bruce Almighty. Like, seriously, like Morgan Freeman showing up as God. Of course, I've stated before, I'd much rather it be actually Morgan Freeman. Just to note, for next time, God
Please,
character.
Morgan Freeman, come.
I'd like for it to actually be Morgan Freeman. There's somebody close to Morgan Freeman, but it's always the old white guy with the beard. And he'll always, if he's not like just handing me something that I need without knowing, without, any reason as to why he would be doing that, no way to know that I had needed that, just having it for me. It'll be something else, like he'll say something indirectly poking at something that's a personal issue for me at the time, like a question I have or a problem I have, something that's personal, that even so personal as to be like something that I don't really want to share openly with them, even though I have this idea in my head that this is like this mythical figure that's meeting with me, that knows me personally somehow. And that's where we get into like dealing with the whole illusion, where I've spoken how it seems to me like the idea of the God concept and the personality is kind of like this romantic affair, like this lost love affair, where there's an illusion, there's a dream that's separating you. You come so close, be like face to face, but you can't quite touch because there's this dream between you, this illusion.
Well, it would seem to be the case because, the more you ignore and kind of push away the idea of synchronicity, then the less it's going to happen to you. And if you kind of follow and let that a little bit of excitement kind of ignite within you, like, wow, that's like when something happens like that, the synchronicity or a deja vu or something, and you kind of follow that in a sense and appreciate it and think about it, then it happens more and more. And so it's up to you, absolutely, if you want those things to happen.
The more that you engage it, the more it'll happen. With synchronicity, the more that you acknowledge it, the more it'll present itself. But where it comes to this particular character popping up via synchronicity like this, it's like, even if you were to stand there, like, if you were to just openly engage this character and treat him as though he were like the God character, and like you knew him personally somehow, even though he's a perfect stranger to you in the moment, they're seemingly a perfect stranger, that would come across as being somewhat crazy. And of course you run the risk of being wrong about it and like treating this person in that way, and then he's gonna be like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, you are crazy.
Yeah,
and
I'm
so
sure that happens all the time.
you get to that point where it's like that illusion is there no matter what, because even if you did acknowledge it and say, you know, I know this person, and treat him as though he is personal to you, and he were to respond in just such a way, you still have to question in the back of your mind, like, maybe he's crazy, or maybe he's bullshitting me. Like, there's no way to get through that. You're always going to have that thin veneer of the dream between...
Yeah, it's that, the mystery of it is
right.
always at the end.
But I'm saying that's an experiment I'll have to run. Next time I run into this, I'm going to do my best to just be open and honest about it and see where that goes, and see if the more you push the synchronicity, maybe it'll happen to the point where it just... Because I'm thinking it's like having a lucid dream. And again, we're speaking to the concept of lucidity, where if I do acknowledge the dream as it's happening to such an extent, will it become more dreamlike, and will it pass over into this other level? Because it seems like it's on the verge of moving into this other level at times. And of course, I'm sure there are a lot of people watching who are going to think that I'm just crazy, but watch. For blues out there, you're going to run into that. You're going to run into this character. And next time you do, I'm sure some of you will even notice that you have before.
I think it's personalized to the person.
Right.
It's an individualized thing. So
it's going
for you, it's like the bearded...
But the bearded white man, the older white man with the beard, with the white
archetype.
Beard. Yeah, that's going to be...
the wise old figure.
Yeah, that's going to be a common archetype, because that's what a lot of people are taught to think of God as being.
Yeah, and fairy tales and books and movies and that kind of stuff.
So yeah,
but archetypes are archetypes for a reason. You know, the symbology of it is solid, and you know.
And I'm certain that many of you are going to realize that you've run into this character in some form or another. It won't necessarily be the older white man with the white beard, but it's going to be whatever you attribute as being a mythical figure, a god character. I'm sure blues out there will have run into this character. Maybe you're taking notice now. Hey, I've actually run into that before. You know, maybe you want to press that and run this experiment along with me.
A lot of them don't stick, though. I mean, after years and years, you can be interested and excited about and curious about different synchronicities, but like I couldn't name, you know what I mean? Like I couldn't name one. Sometimes they're just so small that they kind of pass right over you, and you can take a moment out to say like, wow, that was really cool. You know, somebody's looking out for me, however you react to it, but they're so few and far between and small that it doesn't really, it's not a giant event that kind of captures your attention.
Yeah. And here's just the thing is the more that you look into it, the more lucid you become to this process that's happening, and become aware of synchronicities transpiring, the more you're going to find that they're always happening to some extent or another on smaller or larger scales. These things are always happening, and I'm sure that if you dug deep enough into it, if you actually like investigated your own past and looked into the series of events in retrospect, you'd see that these synchronicities are constantly playing out. Like nothing is not one, really. At least that's the way it's become for me for the most part. And this is speaking directly to nature.
You could look at it that way.
Yeah, well, that's just it.
You could interpret it that way. Nothing is not a synchronicity, but I think most people are kind of... You come in and out of that lucidity because we all have our, daily grind, day-to-day stuff.
Nothing still is a synchronicity.
What do you mean?
Nothing is a synchronicity.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you mean. I think it's difficult.
Nothing is a synchronicity.
It's difficult to stay... in that state of like you're aware of that kind of shit when you're going through.
Nothing is the only
day.
thing that's never not a synchronicity.
Shut the fuck up.
You know what I mean? But that's speaking directly to the nature of this video, and what we want to speak to here is what I mentioned as being a form of practical time travel, which is what the previous video done by this particular young lady on her channel, Are You Awakening, did, and I'll pull that up here. Sweetie Cheeks has not seen this video or even seen this channel yet, so we're just introducing her to it now. I of course have watched the video.
New stuff.
Community harassment in Lakewood.
Uh-oh. Who's harassing the community? Not cool people.
That's cool. Never mind. That's one of our people.
you remember that guy that got carjacked at Aldi's? It was like an old man. Now I'm afraid to go to that Aldi's.
By the way, for Sir Michael, should he actually be watching, I'm going to need for you to go ahead and fucking respond to me, dude, because we get worried. Sir Michael is an operative in the field who actually, the work that he's doing on behalf of the initiative does place him in life-threatening scenarios, and it's been a few days since he's responded to me.
Oh, no.
Which is something I was worried about earlier today. That's the reason why I woke up early, was I was hoping to get a hold of him early in the morning, get some shit done. Anyways, hopefully that's going to happen this morning in 2 hours. 3 hours. So, here we go to Are You Awakening? We have her queued up. And we'll play you a little bit of what she has to say, and we'll take it from there because, as I said, Sweetie Cheeks has not seen this video or this channel before, but I'm not sure that we have the time really to watch the entire video.
I thought you said it was relatively short.
It's 11 minutes and 22 seconds.
That's pretty short.
It's called Timeline Switch, How to Dump a Past Memory, and this speaks particularly to... see, it seems like she has an idea here, madam. It seems like you have an idea as to how you can go about affecting what effectively amounts to practical time travel insofar as regards altering your perspectives on the past, altering values in the past, but you don't really have like a solid working schematic for it, which is what soul mechanics pretty much, that's going to be the faceplate for the technology that we're working on building here. And what we're working with is essentially the technology of value and aspects and how essentially to affect time travel. So this is where it comes to the point. I should like to note that your channel and our channel could collaborate to this effect and make a hell of a lot of progress here, especially as regards the current investigation regarding the algorithm of negative engagement, the ANE as we're calling it, and
I like that.
And how we should like to combat it by altering how people have been, altering the perspectives that we've had on it in the past, and seeing how, in fact, even the negative engagements have been working to a positive effect up to this point. But
anything can have a positive effect, even a negative incident or a negative thing. Something good can come out of anything. But that sounds very, very fascinating. Timeline switch.
Timeline switch. How to dump a past memory. We'll
Very
start her
cool.
off at the very beginning here and see what she has to say.
Hi, this is Kimberly from Are You Awakening? And I am here to talk to you today.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I want to see what she looks like.
I'm sorry, madam. I did not recall having heard your name before, but I should like to note that her name's Kimberly. The girl to whom, my coworker to whom I'm dedicating this video, her name is Kim. But Madam Damaris, as I call her, Damaris, my supervisor, repeatedly calls her Kimberly, though she's asked her not to.
Just call her Kim.
And our mascot is Creepy Kimberly, whom we have
stole that.
We
from,
acquired. We won Creepy Kimberly as a trophy in our recent engagement with Anti-Ordinary for the High Noon series. I'm gonna go ahead and declare, and Demi's not arguing with us on the matter, so I'm gonna go ahead and declare us having won that bout. And
we should make our own Kimberly. It looks like we got a couple guys back there, like Kakarot could be our Kimberly for right now.
Well, I mean, we can make our own little trophies and stuff, but the Kimberly I'm regarding as our trophy having won that engagement. I think that's there's purpose in that. That value is gonna come in handy later. Watch. We'll make note of it for our time. Oh, also to run a further experiment for just as a kind of another measure of practical time travel. There's another dude I ran into who I'm marking as a target asset for us. I haven't shown you him yet, and I haven't even put him up on the list yet. But we'll get to him later. I think his channel's called Content with Jeremiah, or Content with Jeremiah, and he does these videos wherein he when he was a kid, he recorded himself, or it appears to be the case, that when he was a kid, he recorded himself making videos for his future self, and now he has conversations with them. Whoa. It's really cool. I think that we should do that.
That would be so cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
I wish we did that.
We are going to for
cool.
an experiment. One of the next videos that you and I will make, we'll go
for
ahead.
Our 75-year-old selves.
We'll come up with questions or come up with questions or insights or anything you'd like to say to the future self, and we'll put that video down like a time capsule. We'll lock it off, and then 1 year after we posted it, we'll go back.
1 year is not that long, dude.
Well, we'll span it out. We'll make it longer and longer. But
like in 5 minutes.
But this is going to be specifically as regards the channel. We'll have this time capsule for 1 year later that we can bust into, and then we can do it like an annual thing, and we can do it further. Yeah, we'll branch this out. We're going to do a lot of cool experiments with time travel in general.
I like that.
Hopefully getting down to where I can actually explain what I've spoken to as being time travel in the past as regards DreamWorks and astral projections and such. But for now, we're going to deal with altering values, tinkering with the mechanics of the soul, as it were. So here we go with Madam Kimberly, coincidentally.
About how to remove a memory's grasp. Also called timeline navigation, if you want to be trendy about it lately. So let's say you have a memory that just won't go away. It keeps popping up. You keep seeing pictures of it, and you're like, oh, you just go away so I can move on. Well, I want to talk to you about what that memory is doing for you. Okay? We're going to start with some basics here, which you may or may not want to believe, but I'm going to tell you anyway, since they are universal truths, and I'm planting the seed, whether you let it sprout now or later, there is no time. You've probably heard that before. There is no time. There is no past. There is no present. And there is no future. It's all happening now. Now, because we're on Earth and we decided to live amongst some serious limitations, yes, like time, linear time, and space, right? Where there's stuff in between you and me. All of these things are physical constructs. They are root assumptions that we have all adopted in order to live on the physical plane. And they're not true. Now, with that said, whether you believe it or not, I would like you to suspend your judgment for a few minutes and perhaps consider what a memory does to you. And since we're all agreeing to live on this physical plane, we do categorize our events into past, present, and future. Okay? That's so that we can make sense from an ego perspective of our displacement, of our growth. Okay? So, we're going to call a memory something that you had in your past, meaning you consciously experienced it, you recognized that it had a beginning and an end, right? And then after it occurred, you filed it in the past. It happened back then. Okay? That's how we've defined a memory. Now, let's say you have a crappy memory, it comes up and you're like, there it is, again, I can't get rid of it. Well, yes, you can. I want you to think from a mechanical perspective for a second. If time does not exist, then it really didn't happen in your past. It just happened. Okay? Now, something that just happened was something that happened because you are focusing on it. And you are a multidimensional being. There are things happening to you here and here and here. You're focusing on this one right now, but there is another probable you that's experiencing this thing, and there's another probable you experiencing this thing. There are multiple probable yous who are making different decisions to experience different things. You are focusing on one. Now, why? If it sucked, why? Right? Here's where you get your power back. Here's where you start to learn how powerful you are. You are not required to keep that as a memory. You can keep this as an idea, as a possibility, right? You can also look over here and say, well, what if it hadn't happened that way? What if it never happened? Okay? That's another possibility. All right? It's all about where your consciousness is focusing. That's how you label a memory. My consciousness focused on this event. Well, my consciousness doesn't like that event, so my consciousness is going to focus on a different one.
I love the way you. Okay? Okay? That's the best, but I think that what she's saying is super fascinating, and, you know, if you can have all the scientists in the world try and figure shit out, but there's so much that we still don't know. And so you just have to kind of follow the breadcrumbs as they take you. And I was just talking about this the other night with my niece, that she had something that was bugging her and is always super focused on like the future and the plan is this, and when this happens, the timeline or the time, you know, time is ticking, and as soon as that time runs out, my little stopwatch, then I'm going to be happy, and then I'm going to be content, and then I'm going to be fulfilled, and then I'm going to feel good. But for right now, I just can't, because blah 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 blah. Lots of excuses. You could, you know, we all do it. It's just name an excuse, and there's a list of 5 or 6 of them. And I told her, and I was just like, you know, you never really know what's going to happen. So, like, yeah, you could end up doing A, B, C, or D 5 years from now, 10 years from now, hell, a year from now. But what the fuck is that worth it if you feel like shit right now?
Right.
Like, every day. Like, just, you know, you gotta recharge your batteries.
Yeah. And see, this is... I've spoken to essentially what I've termed as being like ghosts that are haunting us, and essentially haunting your psyche. Like,
yeah, ghost of the future is basically just worry, anxiety, worry about what's going to happen. Well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? We don't know what's going to happen.
It could also be...
So why don't you just take care of yourself and try to feel good?
I mean, it usually is going to be ghosts from the future, which is the ironic part.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to be these...
That's what anxiety is.
These post-after, or these... I'm not sure how to term it. These kind of like pre-after images that you have... reflections of what you would like to be happening, or what you hope to happen, or what you're plotting to happen.
Your plan. That's what it's all about, is the plan.
Mm-hmm.
This plan and this plan and this plan. And even the classes. Not even like the long-term plan, but even little each assignment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This paper, this homework, this whatever is due, this is the plan. This is the plan for right now, the plan for the next thing, the plan for the next thing. And all the while, she's just looking totally beat and just not tired like, oh, I can't sleep. Tired like your vital energy, you know? And that's what I told her. I was like, that's not just bullshit. Like, you need to do something for yourself, and fuck the plan. What about right now? Does that not matter? What the fuck is the point of the plan? What is the point of the plan if you feel like shit?
No, also we have ghosts that are haunting us from the past in so many different ways. Values that are presented by people, like, for example, there could be many, and I'm sure there are, if you really look into it, as I noted with the scratch maneuver video, wherein I suggested making a list of the things that you actually know about yourself, and eliminating the things that you don't actually know about yourself.
That you're uncertain of?
Yeah, the things that are not absolutely established. You're going to come to find that there's a lot of things that are not absolutely established, and...
Yeah, nothing's set in stone, and everybody says that shit all the time, too. Oh, people change, but, like... Do you know that you can? Like, you can. The potential is there.
What you're going to find if you do that exercise, more so than most other things, in fact, more so perhaps than anything, is you're going to find that there are a lot of ghosts that you have essentially making up your personality that are things not only that you're not certain of, but things
They're
that
not even coming from
wrong.
you. Yes, they're not even coming from you. They're coming from out there,
Right.
from other people.
Preconceived notions that you have, like
That's perfect. That's
like
beautiful.
the example I made was about Pluto. Pluto's a planet, but now we're saying Pluto's not a planet, and that's what we're holding is a scientific, insofar as regards the current scientific understanding, is that Pluto is not a planet. Although we were in school, they taught us Pluto's a planet.
Yeah, 9 planets. It's
This
just
is
the
a
way
value that's been altered, and for most of us who have been brought up, we have 9 planets, and Pluto most certainly is a planet.
What's your acronym for the planets? Which one did you use?
Oh, I don't remember.
There's so many different ones, but my favorite is always my very eager mother just spanked ugly naked people. The people that was in there, it's the 9th planet.
Yeah. So you're gonna come across all of these notions that you have that are essentially like ghosts haunting you, that are making up your personality because they're factors that you attribute as being a piece of your character
Just
that
automatically
are not correct, that are.
I wonder why people do that.
Because we have this sense of precedent about us as human beings, wherein we want to know, we want to be knowing, we want to be the arbiters, we want to be understanding, and so we present things as being known where in fact they're not. And that's what you're going to come across is a lot of the scientific understandings that we have are not actually known. They've just been presented as being known,
and
because people want to tell you what is.
Right, and they're so hard to change too. Like I immediately thought of the whole thing with Graham Hancock, and he's trying to present material and evidence that shows something completely different than the normal historical and archaeological information puts forward as being truth. And it's a battle. I mean, God, it's years and years and years of telling people, no, this is not correct, and writing books and having people say you're crazy and you're stupid and blah 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 and all this shit, when it turns out after years and years and years other people collect the same evidence and then they have to change it and adapt. But this poor guy is over here, people are calling him a dickhead, but he was trying to just put out the evidence, nothing more, not trying to tell anybody, well, you're so stupid. He's just like, hey, I found this evidence. And everyone was so offended, all the archaeological community,
Whereas it is the people who have presented the facts as they were, who are essentially telling everybody else that they're stupid. Like, that's it. Like, we know this, we know better, and here's what we're telling you, but in fact they don't know, and a lot of it's not only incorrect, like mistakenly incorrect, but deliberately false. Like for that Zawe Huas guy or whatever in Egypt who like went out of his way to lie through his teeth to keep
the Minister of
people from.
Antiquities.
He wouldn't allow people to do archaeological surveys.
He wouldn't even do interviews with certain people.
He wouldn't do interviews. He wouldn't acknowledge certain things, all to back up this idea that the Earth was 6,000 years old and this and that. All the religious, and again,
I don't know if he was saying that stuff, but it doesn't matter.
Well, that's what the general idea was, that
you can't change it.
It's only this however many years old, and this is what we know about it.
This
where
is
in
the
fact
timeline.
they don't know.
Yeah, when new evidence is presented, you must adapt.
And so I mean, there's so many branching aspects we can jump to from this, but again, it's going to be as regards this particular notion, like we have the Mandela effect thing in play, where people are having differing memories about things.
That's a weird one.
I thoroughly believe that this is an aspect of us branching into different timelines, as it were, and I have many reasons to believe that, but the thing is that there are going to be values. Like, we have all these aspects in play that are understandings. We have implications attached to values, but the values are there. There are going to be actual values you can find that are real, that are certain, that you can essentially have set in stone and established. And those are what you're going to be looking for when you're identifying your own characteristics as regards to scratch maneuver exercise, but once you have identified values, you can switch them out, and you can switch them out. It's as simple as altering your perspective on them. Like,
I mean, you say it's as simple as altering your perspective, but that kind of makes it sound like it's literally as simple as a moment of you changing your mind. And I think a lot of people think that that's some kind of like crazy uphill battle that's going to take years and all this stuff, and I can't just change, what I believe or how I feel or whatever. And we talked about this before, when really it's just a matter of a single moment of you making a decision. Just in your head. It doesn't have to be in the environment. It doesn't have to be to someone else. It only matters what you think and feel.
well, see, this is the thing of it, is that, as I've stated many times, time itself, the substance of reality, the actual material of existence, what we refer to as being time, is a holographic substance, in the sense that your perspective of it, wherever you move your perspective, the idea you have is that you're moving through this linear time frame forward,
Like
aging.
she said, it's limiting.
But in reality, you're just altering your perspective, and it's still the same value. That time, it's four-dimensional. It's sitting there like this rock just sits and is.
And is. Oh my gosh, that's such a good movie. So would that be comparable to, like, the infinite now kind of thought?
That's what it is.
Of
but
the Eastern
practices? Or the eternal recurrence is another one that comes up, but it's...
Oh, I like that.
It's
eternal recurrence. But it's the now. It
is just
now.
one moment that's existing, and as you alter your perspective on it, the values shuffle, and you see a different picture. The time itself that you're looking at, the appearance of it alters, but the values of it remain the same. The aspects change, and it could be as simple as looking at something in retrospect and being like, well, for example, I woke up, I didn't have enough cigarettes to hang out, that sucked, I left. But then I ran into that synchronicity, and suddenly that crappy value that made me have to leave for work early
turned into something
became
else.
this amazing opportunity where
Or
I
an
came up
adventure
with
or whatever.
this story. And it's like your perspective on a value as it's transpired will alter, the aspects will alter, and the feeling, the emotion that's attached to that, which brings us back to what we were regarding as time mechanics, or now principle dynamics, wherein we attach feelings and the chemical signatures, the physiological responses attached to emotions to a certain sensory perception, and we can essentially trigger that sensory perception. Well, you're going to have different triggering mechanisms in play that are going to cause for your body and your brain and your psyche to respond in a certain way, and thereby create continuously the reality that you're experiencing. And if you have these ghosts attached to you, these negative ideas, these implications that are in some way negatively impacting, it's going to cause for you to continuously recreate this negative scenario. And that speaks directly to what we're talking about with the negative engagement algorithm, wherein essentially what we have here is a positive emotion attached to a negative signature. So people become successful via the social media platforms and via life in general.
The amount of engagement on said platforms.
Right, by being negative and by experiencing negative feedback, that gives them a feeling of achievement and success. And so now they're hardwiring their brain, not necessarily hardwiring, but for the most part, so to speak, wiring their brains to, again, successfully become more negative. And it's propagating itself, it's recreating itself, it's steadily reinforcing itself, this negativity. Being negative results in success, and so I will become
Continue,
more and more and more negative, and this is beating us into the fucking dirt, and we're not even noticing it happening, because again, it's like the frog in boiling water scenario, wherein we just don't even notice how hot it's getting until we are dead.
Yeah. Well, people freak out though too, especially in the current, political climate that we're in, particularly in our country. But I think people forget. They get all panicky and impassioned and freaked out, and they're like, "Can you believe it?" And I think that everyone forgets that, most people, and I mean most in its actual definite, like what it means, most people probably agree and feel the same. The reason that you see the extremists pop up in the news is because it's extreme, and the reason that it's called extreme is because it's a small portion on either side that's extreme, and I think people forget that, and they get all flustery. My brother does it all the time. He's like, "Oh my god," and I go, "Dude, most people agree with you. They just want to do like me, and normal people just want to live our lives."
See, people suggest that this is something like this is a media influence, that this is a deliberate play to show us the negativity, to show us the extremism, to push us toward that extreme, to affect us negatively. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, it very likely is just an accident, in the sense that this just so happens to be what provokes this response, because what I'd like to try and get across here, specifically in this video, to alter our perspective on the way that we've been living our lives, to cause a dramatic shift in the way that we view the entirety of our lives, is that this algorithm for negative engagement, it's not in the social media platform and reflecting in our lives. It's in the social media platform because it's in our lives. Yeah. It's the same as a simulation theory, wherein, we say that, well, we create video games, we create simulations that appear to be so similar to reality. It's not that the reality is, it's not that the simulation appears to be like our reality because our reality, is a simulation. We create the simulation based on our reality.
Right.
And it's the same with this algorithm, that we're nailing down, etching into stone the same pattern that we've always been driving at. That we reward negativity, that we reward conflict, we reward extremism.
Before there was Facebook and Instagram and whatever, there was newspapers and books and, radio shows and that kind of stuff. So it's not like this is a wholly new concept. Like this is something I think we've been practiced at for generations.
It's as simple as activity, which brings us back around to this whole activism complex, and this activist complex that's going around, this activist syndrome, where that's what we feel rewarded with, this sense of adventure, this sense of extremism, this sense of activism, this activity, because it breaks away from the norm, and it's just that simple. It's not necessarily good or bad, it's just different than what is normal.
But it's good or bad in the sense that nobody does it because they think they're doing the wrong thing. It's a fight for, something that you truly believe is right, and you want to help. Even the psychos and weirdos, like Nazi guys, like, they think they're doing the right thing.
They do.
They do. Some of them.
Like
so it's like...
I've stated before, we've actually run into this argument as to whether there's evil in the world. No, I don't believe there's evil in the world. I believe everybody... unless you're like a genuine psychopath, and even in the case that you're a genuine psychopath, you're not thinking about it at all. You're certainly not regarding yourself as being evil, I don't think.
It makes sense.
But for the most part, it's only really in hindsight, in retrospect, that we recognize something as being inherently wrong because of the effects that it's incurred. But
if it hadn't incurred those effects,
it wouldn't
be wrong.
This is like a debate I found myself in, sort of a pseudo debate. Another commenter who's kind of debating me, we were talking about the whole Onision thing in somebody else's video, and I was just generally speaking to the effect that I believe Onision is, that he's not really truly responsible in
He's
the
not right
in the
in his
sense
head,
that if he is a psychopath, he's legally not to be regarded as legally responsible for his actions, and morally responsible, really, because he wouldn't have a sense of morality in that sense.
Right.
But that was neither here nor there as regards this actual debate that rose, which this person jumps on and he starts, like, I guess he thinks he's arguing with me over the merits of pedophilia, saying that, well, he questioned me repeatedly, saying that something about victims who say, this is really weird, he said to me that victims of pedophilia who speak to their pedophiles or to their abusers as having been like a positive influence on them, or that they enjoyed something about being abused, like they enjoyed their sexual activity when they were kids, get death threats for stating that. And I was like, I don't really see that happening. Like, I don't think that there are a lot of people saying that they're happy with their abuses, and I don't really know where this guy was coming from, but he kept driving at that, and eventually he gets around to saying to me, well, would you not say that he said pedophilia is wrong because of the negative or the traumatic impact it has upon children, right or wrong? And I'm like, well, I mean, technically it's not wrong until it has a negative impact. Like, that's what we judge it by. But you're telling me that you think there are victims out there who do not experience a negative impact, who actually think positively upon these abuses. So, I mean,
but there's so many
on what grounds
factors.
are you stating that it's inherently wrong? But that's just it. Even something as awful as pedophilia is not inherently wrong until you look at it in retrospect and see these negative traumas that it's incurred. I mean, so what I was saying to him is that not even too long ago, relatively speaking, it wasn't so long ago that we encouraged that sort of behavior, that we had men marrying underage, 12, 13-year-old girls.
And that still happens in some parts of the world.
You know, and we didn't
but it's
regard
not
that as
like
being
they're
wrong.
not having a good time,
No.
you know, those fucking poor girls. And it doesn't take, it doesn't take, you know, a lapse of a certain amount of time for them to be traumatized. I mean, they're probably traumatized immediately.
Yeah, and they are traumatized immediately in most cases, and that's where, I mean, there's going to be cases that differ, obviously, from the norm. There's going to be, I'm sure, girls out there who fantasize about older men. We've seen this happen before, you know, but it's
weird shit, rape fantasies, and all kinds of weird shit going on,
But for the most part, we can lean towards identifying what seems to be an objective value in that regard, wherein, you know, certain things are to be regarded as inherently wrong for the most part. We can make that assessment, but only based on our growth. Because, again, it wasn't too long ago that we regarded that to be ordinary and acceptable, but now, given our level of maturity as regards our development as a species, we no longer recognize it as such. It's now become unacceptable, and with good reason.
Oh man, that's like a whole study of ethics that guy's getting in with you. That's crazy.
And he told me that he said, I run into people like you sometimes who don't have the common ideas and don't have the common he said don't have the ordinary common
well, you're not ordinary and common, you piece of shit.
opinions, and he said to me, people like you who make my goal of getting the truth across to people so much more difficult.
Oh,
I'm like,
good
are you
activist.
for real?
Pat on the head for you, buddy, for leaving a comment.
So, I mean,
doing the Lord's work.
Anyone who questions your idea of what is true is getting in the way of spreading objective truth. Again, this is that's really going to be the primary regard.
Kind of an oxymoron.
You know, where we deal with what we want to think of as being practical time travel, altering values. You have to identify values. Values are going to be an objective, a certainty. They're going to be the actual time of a thing, whereas the aspects attached to it, the implications, are the perspective you have on it, the filters that you're viewing it through. And so that would really be the exercise to take into regard, is identifying objective values, or attempting to, because, I mean, it gets increasingly difficult the closer that you come to it, this is where I've spoken to approaching the boundary before, or approaching nowhere, as it were, is that when you do begin to identify these values, the closer that you come to inspecting them, the more kind of blurry and hallucinogenic they tend to get, to the point where just about everything can be seen through. It becomes translucent in this way. It's difficult to explain it, and I'm gonna let you carry off for a moment because I have to use the bathroom. I'll be right back.
Uh-oh. I like this chick a lot. I've never seen any of her videos. She looks a little bit like an older lady and kind of talks like maybe she is a professional, like a therapist or a scientist or something like that. Like the words that she uses, and I don't know. I really think it's cool that she's making these videos and is talking about stuff that people don't like to talk about. They don't respond well to things when you start saying, time isn't real, and, the eternal now, and you're talking about that kind of stuff. People get usually they just leave, honestly. It's very off-putting to some people, but I think if you can get past the kind of weirdness of it, there's a little bit of truth there. And the weird part is that stuff like that has been in practice, especially, like I said earlier, in the Eastern religions and that kind of thing, for centuries and eons. So it seems weird that now, in kind of modern times, it would be thought of as like hooey and woo-woo, I guess is the term. Let's watch a few more minutes.
Okay? They're just ideas. All of them, just ideas. Right? In a holographic world, these reflections coming back to you are obviously reflections of yourself, but they're giving you a chance to have an idea about what happened. And if you had an idea about what happened and it sucked, then change your idea. So how do we do that?
That's what she was talking
This is
about.
also called neurolinguistics.
But that's interesting that she brought up the holographic universe. I think that means different things to different people, but what I think of when I hear that term is every piece contains a picture of the whole. A hologram technically is like the Mandelbrot set kind of thing, where you keep zooming in and zooming in, and it's the same,
Should've
it's
went
just
before you left, right?
infinitely. It's like when you're sitting in front of two mirrors, and it can just kind of keep going on forever and ever. That's kind of like a hologram. It doesn't necessarily mean like, Michael Jackson on the stage and you can put your arm through him, like kind of situation. I think it goes a little bit deeper than that when, you're talking about the universe. So yeah, she mentioned the holographic universe, and then is now talking about going in and kind of fixing traumatic shit.
Linguistic programming. I haven't made this up.
Linguistic
All right?
programming.
You can go follow the
Neurolinguistic
scientific
programming.
manner
That's,
of doing it. Plenty of ways to do it.
Neurolinguistic programming is
in
one of
which
the
you basically-
primary skill sets, or one of the primary tool sets that we work with, being spotters. Something that we'd like to get across to you guys, that we'd like to help you guys get acquainted with. We'll give you links and such to like videos you can look into. There's a few mastered spotters out there who can teach this to you for free via YouTube. But again, we're gonna have to. You guys are all spotters. Remember that, our audience. We're regarding you all as spotters. But we're gonna need, in order to get deeper into these ideas, and in order to get these things across, we are going to need to work on spreading out our reach so that we can affect this particular investigation, this experiment.
Well, chicks like this, she kind of has a little niche, and some other people have their own little thing, but really all these things go together. So I think it's interesting that it's a little bit spread out, and people can have their own little place in the weird,
here's a
nature
perfect
of reality.
instance of how it is in fact a holographic reality. See, people speak to the nature of the holographic universe insofar as regards the material of it, that we can see, the information of the whole contained in each little piece, and that there is this cosmological nature to it, as above, so below, sort of as within, so without. But it is in fact a holographic reality, and that's what we're going to try and get across here, especially through this in particular investigation, but
That's
through the
a tough
channel
one,
as a
yeah.
whole, is that it's not merely that the materials are the same and that the grander and smaller scales are different variations of the same thing. It's that where people have these particular niches and these particular topics and areas of inquiry, it's not just that it all fits together, it is in fact that it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. All the values are the same. There's only one thing happening. There's only one person here. There's only one thing happening. There is only one value in play.
But
And
that
we
takes,
just see all these different variations of it
Yeah.
because it's
but
holographic in nature.
people forget, like you said earlier, everything is coming through these filters. We have our perception that changes. Whatever's going on out there changes the way that we experience stuff. And I'm not talking about 5 senses or 6 senses. I'm talking about thousands and possibly millions of senses of each particular person.
But in effect, there are actually only one sense.
That's a lot for people. Like I was saying when you were in the bathroom, people kind of tend to just drop it right there and walk away because you don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, you know? Like on a normal, everyday kind of person doesn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole when you start talking about holographic universe and the infinite now and that kind of stuff. And I think the thing that you're talking about where you described everything as being there's only one thing happening and only one person here, that takes a lot of layers of boiling it down, so to speak. You know, and so like this lady is boiling down one little piece and other people are boiling down other pieces and you just kind of keep going
But see,
and boiling it down.
Here's the thing, is that,
which is a weird term.
and this
Cooking
is
term,
how
I guess.
I'm going to take it's an alchemy term. I'm going to take a stab at impressing what I tried to get across in the past 2 videos regarding the channeling aspect and regarding this as being channeling. Deeper than you think channeling, because in most cases people think of channeling as being like, again, you know, channeling the voice of like a distant, like a ghost or a spirit or something, channeling that's what we're all doing, is we're built to be these channels that have this energy coming through it. Now, if this young lady, Kimberly, she collaborates with us and we work together on combining the aspects that we have to this value, we'll get a broader perspective on that single value and effectively get closer to channeling that one value, which is essentially, again, like the God figure, the oversoul, the collective consciousness that we're attempting to essentially channel. And that would be the goal, is to bring this collective consciousness to life, to bring it to the surface, to realize it. And for it to become lucid and aware and awake and alive in the world as it's happening, rather than dipping in and out from time to time, rather than being in differing layers of this dream state.
I think the dipping in and out is part of what we are. I think it's part of our nature because it seems to be the one constant thing with every little game that we play, is that you forget and remember and forget and remember. And I think that the fact that you're dipping in and out of certain things and relearning lessons and re-experiencing coincidences and remembering who you are from, maybe not from day to day, some people year to year or whatever, but I think that's inherent. I don't know if you can stop that from happening.
You can. See, here's the thing, is that the reason why we dip in and out like that is because we are, in fact, working very hard to forget things. We're working hard to block things out, to ignore things. I've stated this before as regards to even so much as your senses, wherein there's so much happening around you that your brain is deliberately ignoring. It's not that your brain would have to work extra hard to see these things, it's that your brain is working extra hard to block it out, so that it isn't a nuisance to you, so that it isn't disorienting. It's focused, it's concentrated on whatever you're telling it to be concentrated on. And as regards memory, we are, in fact, where this Kimberly speaks to removing a memory that's bothersome to you, that's troublesome, something
I
that's
feel like
holding
that's
you back.
a service she's providing, because it's really important information and could help a lot of people.
We are, in fact, also blocking out a great deal of positive memory, positive values, in order to avoid the negative effects, the negative consequences, the negative feedbacks that we have. And it's because we've been making the mistake of feeding into this successful negativity, this algorithm for negative engagement.
Interesting.
So we are, in effect, spending a lot of time to eliminate time, to ignore certain times, and then to avoid seeing the bigger picture. And there's a reason for that, which I'm not going to jump into here. I'm not going to dive into that hole just yet, but there is, again, there's one thing happening, and that one thing, there's a very good reason why we fight desperately to remain unaware of it. So,
Kimberly, I want to listen a little bit longer, because she's got a good way to dump a traumatic memory.
Redesign the memory. And so we're going to do this in 5 steps. All right? We're going to do our own neuro-linguistic programming, and we are going to look at a memory, and we are going to put it away. So I want you to think of a memory that didn't feel good. I'll give you an example of one of my memories that wasn't so good. I'm going to pull it out for educational purposes here, and we'll talk about that. So in 2005, I endured Hurricane Katrina, and I lost everything. My house, my business, my job, a cat. That was the worst part, was the cat. And I was a victim. Lots of people, Hurricane Katrina victims, right? I put that label on me, and man,
essentially channeling the negative impact of her memory.
That's the worst part. She was in Hurricane Katrina, and she's like, I lost everything. I lost my house, lost my stuff. Just tell the way that affected her, because of the way that she said it. She's like, yeah, I lost all my shit, and then I lost my cat. It's like, that's so sad. I don't want to lose Alphonse. No. I feel bad.
You can channel as regards the practical time travel ideology here, is that you can in fact channel values that are given to you by other people, because you do have, your brain is equipped with everything it takes to regard that, to understand it, and throughout the experiences of your life, you've become accustomed to it, you become conditioned to making use of these values as they play out. So you can in fact assimilate values from other people. People can sync up, they can make use of the memories that they've mutually
We also
acquired.
have really great imaginations. I mean, just think of some of the art.
Well,
J.R.R. Tolkien's and fucking Picasso's and stuff. So, I mean, we have the ability to put that empathy to the test.
We've already established that the brain doesn't know the difference between a memory and an imagination, because there ultimately is no difference. Everything's a placebo effect. Everything's an effect being recreated in the brain.
I don't know. I don't think we know that for sure. I think that the point of that statement is that we can't trust.
We really can't know that for sure, because there is no sure to be known.
That's where faith comes in, which is why I think that's so important to a lot of people, and everyone has their thing, even like the atheists who are totally opposed to any kind of organized or religious things. There are still things in life that you have to just have faith, otherwise how could you function?
You can't, and that's just it. The reason you can't function without faith is because ultimately it's all a faith-based consideration. That's where we get down to the bound, again, approaching the boundary, approaching the never or nowhere, where you come to realizing that is the one thing that's happening, and that's the reason why we avoid realizing it, is because it's not. Like it's not, there, but by the grace of God go I, is pretty much how you could sum up your very existence. Without faith in the very existence in and of itself, it's not even happening. It's not there.
Oh, well, I just mean faith in yourself.
faith in yourself. Well, that
Like
is
you
faith in
said,
yourself.
can you trust
And ultimately,
what you're
because
experiencing?
boiling it all down by holographic measure into that one value, there is nothing outside of yourself. You only experience yourself. This is where I've made note, and I've said that people have in fact regarded me negative for saying this, and I'm sure a lot of people don't like to hear it, but you don't really care about anything other than yourself. You don't, when you regard yourself as caring for other people, you only care about these other people insofar as regards your perspective on it, how you feel about it, how it affects you, everything that happens.
But maybe
like,
that's for a reason. Maybe that's a sign
it is
that we are all one.
that
What
we are
was
all
that?
one. Yes.
What was that one book that starts out explaining the Native American? Maybe it's Native American. The mirror thing, was that the Four Agreements?
I don't know. I didn't see it before.
It's the mirror thing. So like every time you see another entity, let's just boil that down to its very simplistic, very simplistic terms. And every time you come across another person and you're looking at them face to face, that what you're really seeing is yourself. And there's so many facets of this too. Psychologically, you've got the mirroring and the projection are different tactics that people use for inside their mind, but then even other stuff. The word Namasté, it was created basically just to mean
I recognize
the God in me recognizes the God in you, which means you're both there. Is there two gods, or can there be? Like there's one, and I'm recognizing it over here, looking at another part of it. Yeah. So there's just so many facets of it, again, and so maybe that's the reason why.
To make note of it in its most blatant form is that very factor that we learn in physics, that two things can never touch, that two things...
There's always electrons.
There's always something. There's always a sort of an empty space.
There's a layer of electrons, but then there's a lot about dark matter that we don't know either. So that could be in there.
There's
who
always
knows?
a repelling force between any given two things, any given two atoms, two molecules, two people, two objects. There's always... Nothing ever really touches.
Which again,
you can't really reach.
Trust your sense of touch either.
You can't reach beyond yourself because there is nothing beyond yourself. That's what the boundary is. That's how you come to finding the boundary, to identifying it, and you can reach it through any aspect of your comprehension. Looking at the nature of words and terminology, language will bring you there. Science will bring you there. Psychedelics obviously is going to be one of the routes most people take to get there. Spirituality, any avenue you take, when you start to get further outward, you're going to find that you're actually moving downward, inward, and you're not getting anywhere. You're hitting this boundary. There's this boundary in your comprehension that you cannot get beyond.
That's
your immediate recognition of what you are.
The pentagram, the symbol of the star in the circle, people think it's supposed to be like the goat's head or whatever, with the ears and the goatee. No, that's completely wrong. The pointed up star represents the spiritual ascending into the physical, or vice versa. Oh, I could be wrong. And then the downward one is the opposite. It's this spiritual descending into the physical. So it was interesting that you said down instead of out. That's immediately what I thought of, was the down pointed.
And that's where you reach
star.
When you do reach the never, as I've tried to explain it before. I the best I could explain it is being pure chaos. It's in the sense where you can't even recognize going outward or going inward, going upward or going downward. It's like no matter what you look at, you're just there's no direction to it. It's directionless, it's matterless, it's meaningless.
If you were in space,
void.
You wouldn't know what's up and down and left and right and north and south.
And that in essence is kind of another measure of reaching the boundary, wherein you have to recognize that, well, yes, in outer space there is no up or down or left or right. There's no direction. You're in this vacuum, this void, and where are we now? We're in space.
But you can
Everything
still
is space.
But you can still know where you are, because there are other objects, and
relativity
is the only way.
Relativity is the existence concept upon which
It's
we're
the
working.
only way to know anything.
But that's just it. If you look at relativity from this perspective, you're going to find that onlyness, wherein the only way you can relate to anything else is by measure of your own association.
Exactly.
So, but I think we should clip this one here for now. People,
I'm sorry,
if you want to
Kimberly,
see,
we're gonna finish watching your. I want to finish watching your video.
yeah, we're gonna link her video here.
Yeah.
You guys are gonna have to go and finish watching it yourself. Any audience members, spotters attending, you're gonna have to go check out Kimberly's video.
Give her a
and
like.
You're gonna have to go check out the entirety of her channel, because she is in fact a banging ass operative of the initiative out there working her ass off to do good for everybody. And of course, ultimately, we're all the same person doing the same fucking thing now, aren't we? So, yes, thank you all for attending. We're going to get deeper into this one. Of course, we're going to do a follow-up for Kimberly. We're going to do 2 parts for every target asset that's involved in the investigation. We've actually started to work out a schematic for how we're going to play this. We're going to identify certain peoples that we'd like to address for each investigation, and then throughout the course of the investigation, we're going to go about doing just that. So we have identified thus far Scott Kramer, insofar as regards his ability to have engaged social medias from a positive perspective and become successful using positive engagement, motivation, inspiration. He's an inspirational, positive figure playing against the algorithm, as it were. And we've identified Madam Kimberly and Are You Awakening as being a very prospective resource in this endeavor.
Yeah, she's beautiful, and I'd like to extend a challenge to anybody out there who might be watching this, that if you heard anything, I know it's kind of long video, but if there's anything here in this last hour and 16 minutes or so that you heard that kind of sparked a little bit of interest or intrigue or whatever it is, comment, ask us, tell us, whatever, and then dive in, man.
Yeah.
Dive in. It's out there. It's all over.
We need you to comment. Obviously, that's going to be the big one. We need for you guys to be commenting. We need for you guys to be sharing the videos. We need for you guys to be getting the word out there. Most especially our target assets here, Madam Kimberly and Scott Kramer, if they happen to be watching. We need you guys to help us spread the word. This investigation is going to be prolonged. It's going to be severe.
Yeah, this one never ends.
This one goes on and on until we hit the wall. And, ultimately you're going to find that we already have.
So go forth, and go find your synchronicities, wherever you may find them. And
come back and give us word as to how deeply you are kicking ass out there, how extensively you are kicking the existential ass in the field, our dear spotters. Go forth and be excellent.
Blessed Yule, everybody.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, I got to say it.
Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa,
happy
whatever
holidays.
The hell you're doing.
We will likely not be seeing you again until after Christmas, so enjoy.
Eat good food and be with your families, and we love you.
Yep. Kilo Salai, Tervi Uni Siari, Namaste, mi familia.
Good night.